welcome to the Pokémon Iceberg, Tier 1, Nugget Bridge, Missing No. Missing No, short for Missing Number, is probably the most iconic glitch in all of Pokémon. In the Red and Blue games, Missing No would appear as this. Just a mess of static, really. But if certain letters in your name were different, Missing No could also appear as a Kabutops, Aerodactyl, and a ghost form. Yeah, that one's weird. In the original games, you could actually fight just a standard ghost at the top of the Pokémon Tower. Unfortunately though, this and Missing No never came back. Trading card shortage / price gouging. In 2020 and 21, there was a massive boom in Pokemon card popularity. Different content creators were all getting in on it, and it led to a shortage of Pokemon cards, and even some fights breaking out for packs in stores. To help fix this, the Pokemon Company ended up printing 9 billion cards within 2022. Compared to their yearly average of 1 to 2 billion, that's insane. Leaks. Pokemon has had a good number of leaks in the past, and as I write this script, October 16th, 2024, there has been a massive leak by Game Freak that was a terabyte big. It's been coined as the Terra Leak, and it revealed a lot of beta versions of the game, some mods that never got in, and some stuff I literally can't talk about on YouTube, like with slacking and Typhlosion. Research those at your own risk. Regional differences and censorship. There's a decent amount of differences between the different regional versions of Pokemon, like words and slang obviously being different, but there's a good number of cases of censorship that were pretty big. Some of the most iconic ones being Blackface Jinx, where her original design, that is her original design. An entire episode of a massive Tentacruel terrorizing a city being removed, because reruns were going on pretty soon after 9/11, and for some reason, Registeel's original design looked like this. I can see why they changed it. Brock's jelly-filled donuts. For some reason, the English localization team for the Pokemon anime translated Brock talking about his rice to these apparently being jelly donuts. It led to a lot of memes about it. It was just a weird localization choice. Regional variants. The 3DS games tend to get a bad rap, which honestly sucks. I love these games. I mean, X and Y are some of my favorite. But one thing everyone can agree on is regional variants were a very good idea. Starting with Pokemon Sun and Moon, we got Alolan forms of Pokemon. And aside from appearance-wise them looking different, whole typings got changed. This idea was so successful that to this day, 9 years later, every mainline game has gotten their own line of regional variants. Nuzlocke challenges. The Pokemon community has created a lot of different sets of rules to play Pokemon games by, and the most iconic of them is called a Nuzlocke. This Nuzlocke challenge makes it to where you can only catch one Pokemon per route, specifically the first one you encounter on that route, and you have to name this Pokemon. Okay, so far that's fine, but if it faints, that's it. It's completely dead. You have to release the Pokemon or put it in a box permanently. There's 2 optional rules for this, which do make it a bit more fun and really don't take away from the difficulty at all. The first being the duplicate clause, where if the first Pokemon in an area is one the player already has, they can battle it and the next Pokemon catch if they don't already have it. And another one called the shiny clause, where if the player encounters a shiny wild Pokemon, they can catch it no matter what. And with the odds of getting a shiny, yeah, it's so rare it'll almost never matter. Super Smash Bros. The original cast for Super Smash Bros. Was really good. We got Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, and is that Pikachu and Jigglypuff? Yeah, since the first Smash Bros. Game, Pokemon have been playable characters, and it's gotten to be even more than these two. We've gotten Pokemon Trainer, where you can play as Charizard, Ivysaur, or Bulbasaur, and at this point, aside from that, you can also play Pikachu, Jigglypuff, Lucario, Greninja, Pichu, Mewtwo, and Incineroar. Not to mention all the Pokemon that come out of the Pokeball and Master Ball items. Allegations of promoting animal abuse and cockfighting. The Pokemon games are focused on battling each other with different monsters, and some people, mainly PETA, got angry and claimed that this encouraged animal abuse. It clearly doesn't encourage it at all, but PETA was so mad that they made a mock Pokemon game that was extra violent. It was really gory and just kinda weird that they did it. I really don't understand their thought process. Ditto is a failed Mew clone. There's been a long-running theory that Ditto is a failed Mew clone, an attempt at making Mewtwo. And sure, they do have a good number of similarities, but in 2016 this was proven false by series director Junichi Masuda. He basically just said that all Pokemon are unique life forms of their own, and that Ditto and Mew don't have any relation. It was crazy how big of a theory this was for so long though, and a lot of people still believe they are connected. Legendary birds are Spanish numbers. Similar to the Hydreigon line, the 3 legendary birds in the Red and Blue games were named off of numbers. Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres being 1, 2, and 3 in Spanish. And like I mentioned, it's the same with the Hydreigon line. Dino, Ein is 1, Zweilis, Zwei is 2, and Hydreigon, Dry is 3, all in German. Cerebi. If you want to know literally anything about Pokemon and you look something up, you'll probably come across Cerebi.net, a fan-made Pokemon site that really tells you whatever you want about Pokemon. From version exclusives to new events to how different items work, this site is by far the best. It's basically Wikipedia but for Pokemon. Emmett and Ingo. In Black and White 2, Ingo was one of the leaders of the Battle Subway, along with his brother Emmett. In Legends Arceus, Ingo is somehow back. It was a weird time travel thing, but this made fans like this character a whole lot more. Monotype challenges. Similar to Nuzlocke challenges, monotype challenges are self-imposed and can be very difficult. They're just not as popular. In this challenge, the only rule is that you can use a single typing for a team of Pokemon. For sure not as difficult as Nuzlocke's, but definitely not easy by any means. PokeTubers. This is just a name for YouTubers who make content specifically on Pokemon. They don't have that bad of a rap, just sometimes for sure clickbait way too much. Wonder Trade / Surprise Trade. Wonder Trades or Surprise Trades were introduced in Pokemon X and Y, a system where you can select any of your Pokemon to trade with another random person in the world. It used to be a really nice feature, but unfortunately a lot of hacked Pokemon have made their way into circulation in these games. Nowadays, the best way of getting hacked Pokemon is transferring them from older games through Pokemon Home, and then putting them into the circulation of random trade Pokemon. So now when a Pokemon game comes out, it's usually a good number of months until Home can be used with it. So for a few months after launch, Surprise Trade is kinda cool. Dexit. #BringBackNationalDex. During E3 2019, Junichi Masuda stated that some species of Pokemon, 455 in total across generations 1 through 6, could not be transferred to Pokemon Sword and Shield. After a massive amount of backlash from Pokemon fans, most of which involving #BringBackNationalDex, the controversy became somewhat mitigated when the expansion pass was announced, which added 221 of the missing Pokemon back in. This controversy was sometimes known as Dexit, being a mix of Pokedex and Brexit, which was the withdrawal of the UK, which is Galar in Pokemon, from the EU. This whole thing was a massive deal because for once not all of the Pokemon were available on one console, so to this day, 5 years later, we still don't have them all available on the Switch. Pikachu used to be fat. Pikachu's original design was a lot different from what we have today. Whenever people refer to the old design, they just call it Fat Pikachu, and he hadn't been in the series since Generation 1. That is until Pokemon Sword and Shield came out. When Pikachu turned into a Gigantamax version of himself, he turned back to the old Fat Pikachu design. Shiny Pokemon. I could do a whole video for this topic with how massive it is, but I'll try to sum it up pretty well here. In the Generation 2 games of Pokemon, Gold and Silver, a new mechanic was implemented that would change the franchise forever. Once in a blue moon, you could stumble across a rare, specially colored Pokemon, as Professor Elm described it. When one appears, it would shine before it attacks, and the chances of coming across this shining or shiny Pokemon were 1 in 8,192. Yeah, very hard to get. Although in Generation 2, we also got the first ever guaranteed shiny. One of very few, the Red Gyarados. So if you've played Pokemon Gold and Silver or their remakes, you probably have this guy. But with how rare these Pokemon were, people became fanatic about it, myself included. They were coined shiny Pokemon by the fans and were only officially recognized as that name when Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out. Since they were added, they've been easier to obtain, but the thrill from hunting an oddly colored Pokemon you've been searching for hours and finally coming across it in the wild is just amazing. A lot of Pokemon content on YouTube revolves around doing these shiny hunts. These and Nuzlocke have become some of the most popular forms of content for Pokemon games. Muck spelled backwards. Yeah, Yeah, that's the entry. Markiplier's Smash or Pass video. For some reason, Markiplier posted a 24-minute long video with zero context of him just doing a Smash or Pass with all the Pokemon. Like, there's no intro or anything. Why did he say Smash when Snom was on the screen?
Is that a butt? Smash.
Mewtwo's birthday. One of the diaries in the Pokemon Mansion says that Mewtwo's birthday is February 6th. Referring to its creation since, you know, it's not a natural Pokemon. But yeah, Mewtwo technically has a birthday. Electric Soldier Pokemon / Pokemon Shock. Episode 38 of the original Pokemon anime would feature Ash and his friends alongside a Porygon in a digital world. And while trying to escape from Team Rocket in this world, Pikachu used a move that would cause mass hysteria of kids apparently having seizures. Turns out that didn't happen at all. But I am going to show you the clip here, and, well, you can see why people thought kids would have seizures from it. Obviously, epilepsy warning. Weird / dark Pokedex entries. With Pokemon being targeted more towards kids, you'd think a lot of these entries in the Pokedex about the Mons wouldn't be very dark. But yeah, there's a couple that are a bit more dark than others, like Mimikyu killing anyone who sees their true form. It's also a bit of a sad Pokemon story because it also says he dresses himself up as a Pikachu to look less scary to people, but it doesn't really work. And then there's some entries like Gengar's where it will just kill you. It literally says, should you feel yourself attacked by a sudden chill, it is evidence of an approaching Gengar. There is no escaping, give up. Yeah, some of the Pokedex entries are just weirdly dark. Ilka. Ilka, short for I Love Computer Art, is a company that worked on a lot of games, mainly games like the Nier franchise and Dragon Quest, but they also did the remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. These games were controversial to say the least. They for sure were good remakes, like compared to the original Diamond and Pearl games, they are the same games but with modern graphics, but a lot of the remakes that Game Freak did usually improved on a couple things or added some content from their third game. But for some reason with this one, it was just the original Diamond and Pearl with new graphics. But that wasn't the biggest issue. The chibi art style threw a lot of people off, and it does make sense. I mean, if you look at the DS game, how else are you going to do it? But overall, it was extremely controversial. But now whenever Pokemon fans see Ilka relating to the Pokemon company in any way, a sort of wave of worry may occur. Pokemon Center stores. Pokemon Center stores are the main stores for getting Pokemon merchandise, aside from their online site. Almost all of them are in Japan, but they're insanely big. The amount of Pokemon merch they have is actually insane, and all of them even have their own unique interior and something exclusive to that store. Pokeball button mashing. A massive rumor that's spread amongst Pokemon players is button mashing when you throw a Pokeball. The whole rumor was that if you mashed A or B repeatedly, while in the Pokeball catch animation, that you would have a better odds at catching the Pokemon. I mean, this rumor was massive, from kids from the 90s to even nowadays, the rumor has still persisted, mainly among younger players of the games, but I can't judge because I also thought the same thing. This rumor has been a thing for around 30 years now, which is just insane. Ditto as Pokemon. When Ditto was first introduced in the Pokemon anime, episode 37, Ditto tried impersonating all the Pokemon he saw. Although, when he did, it was amazing. All the Pokemon he transformed into had 2 small dots for eyes and a simple line for a mouth. And it may have been an intended feature for the games as well. When I was looking through some of the leaked files in the big Terra leak this October, I came across this. And yeah, this is probably just promotional art, but would have been amazing to see in the games. This episode, seeing all these really weird looking Pokemon was amazing. Shedinja. Shedinja is a very weird Pokemon just all around. The way to obtain it, how it works, this one's really weird. First, you have to catch a Nincada. Second, you have to have the Nincada in your party, with a spare Pokeball and a free slot for a Pokemon in your party. Once you get this Nincada to level 20 and it evolves into Ninjask, a level 20 Shedinja will appear in that free slot. Aside from this method to get it, the Pokemon is just kind of weird. Shedinja only has 1 health, but can't take damage unless it's super effective towards it. Fortunately, there are 5 types that are super effective against this Pokemon, but it's by far one of the most unique Pokemon ever made. Sprigatito / Weed Cat. For some reason, Sprigatito, the grass-type starter for Paldea, was given really red eyes, and with this being the grass-type Pokemon, everyone just started calling it the Weed Cat. Gardevoir. You know. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet bugs. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet had a rough launch. Tons of glitches, performance issues. It was a really big deal. And it was a massive issue, but I mean, the games are still amazing. And if you look at the charts for how well they've sold, Scarlet and Violet is a close third place in all sales of Pokemon games. So even though it was a big issue, clearly not big enough. Global Trade Station, GTS. The Generation 4 Pokemon games, Diamond and Pearl, introduced Wi-Fi to the franchise, being able to connect with others across the world for the first time. And one of the big features to come from this was the Global Trade Station, GTS for short, a place where you could put up Pokemon for trade, requesting other specific Pokemon in return. Nowadays, the GTS is in an app called Pokemon Home, but since the release of the GTS with Diamond and Pearl, it's been plagued with Pokemon requests that just aren't attainable, like 2 low-level legendaries that just can't spawn. It can get really frustrating with all these fake requests, but incredibly useful to get version-exclusive Pokemon. Usually soon after a game releases, a lot of the trades that are popular will be version-exclusive for version-exclusive, so you can finally fill out that Pokedex. Furret walking. In 2019, the YouTuber Narpy released a video of Furret walking to the Accumula Town music. This meme got massively popular and is a big first thought for Pokemon fans whenever someone mentions Furret. And that's the end of the video. That was just tier 1 of many, so there's gonna be sequel videos. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, week, month, and I'll see you in the next one.